formerly Cody. I am now a teacher's aide. I have been a teacher for many years and have a family of 2 girls. I live in Narre Warren, a widow, and my husband died about 8 years ago. I love to travel and I love to sew. I have many hobbies like sewing, gardening. I love my football team, St Kilda, and I have got a good group of friends that basically I met around the Frankston area, and we're still friendly now. So travelling I like in my little van, and I also have been overseas a couple of times.
Tell me what it was like being a student at Frankston High School.
I was at Frankston High School from 59 to 63, and first of all I came from Overport Primary School. I had spent a year at Bentley Primary School, at Frankston West I think it was, at Davey Street. My father was a builder, so we moved around quite a little bit in those days after the war. Once I started Frankston High School, things started to settle down a little bit, so that was the only secondary college that I went to until year 10. First year I did the umbrella type subjects in year 7 and 8, and from 9 and 10 I did the domestic subjects. My memories of Frankston High is not so much in the classroom, it's more sports. And again, not so much participating, but I love to spectate. Things like the swimming sports and the athletics carnivals, anything outside the classroom I was really involved in. And also the any productions or choir that I could get into, I loved doing that too. My brother was a very good singer, and I tried to emulate him in singing. Didn't quite make that. I just tried to involve myself in anything at Frankston High School that involved productions. As I said, not too sporty, but loved to spectate.
What type of productions were there at Frankston High School?
It was Gilbert and Sullivan type productions by the music teacher. I can't remember her name. Could have been Miss Dodd. The one that I can remember most was a very short musical, Trial by Jury. I was only a member of the jury, but it was quite fun to be involved with that. The choirs we sang at end of year awards ceremonies, and I don't think we went out with the choir, but we did a lot at different functions for the school as far as the choir was concerned.
Were there any type productions like the Rocket Stead?
Not so much back in those days, no. Now I was involved heavily with where I work at Lyndhurst Secondary College. We involved ourselves with that for a few years back then, and being a textiles teacher at that particular school. For the first 3 years made the costumes and did quite well for the organised them and made them. Had a class full of students that wanted to involve themselves in making costumes at that stage. The fourth time we went into the Rocker Stedford, I actually won best costume, so that I felt was a feather in my cap.
What inspired you to become a teacher?
I had gone to, from 1963, finishing year, or Form 4 in those days. To finish off my education, I went to Emily McPherson's College in Melbourne and did a Diploma of Needlecraft, which became Diploma of Fashion and Fashion Design. I'm quite sure, I think it's an arts type subject now, but I don't think it's classed as textiles or fashion design now. From there I went into industry and tried to get into technical college. My academic subjects weren't particularly crash hot. Never say die. I persisted and finished off gaining English, I think the year after I, matriculation English, the year after I left Emily McPherson's. And I did that through night school. And that's another thing I'm proud of, that I never say die. If I want to do something, I'll keep doing it. I think it was Mrs. Oates at Frankston High School that was inspiring in the fact that she was a really, really lovely lady and a good teacher, and textiles. My mother also was very good with needlecraft, and so from there on I thought, well, it would be a good occupation to become a teacher. I loved kids, still do, basically adolescents, and because they're the people that are going to look after us in nursing homes. So I think we should be looking after our young ones. And thought of becoming a teacher was probably from Mrs. Oates at Year 10 level at Frankston High School. I was doing the domestic course there and she was teaching Year 9 and 10.
How has teaching changed from back in the day to now?
I could probably sit here forever and give examples of what's changed. Classroom sizes have changed. The personnel and the clients we have in the classrooms have changed. This generation, I don't think, value public education as much as we did. I think the private sector probably they do because they're paying money for their education. They value education. I cannot see in the area where I am, which is southeast suburbs, that in the public sector I don't think both parents, I'm overgeneralising, I realise that, and students value education. They also have a problem with authority in the classroom. Technology has changed so much. It can be used as a good tool if you've got a very good teacher in the classroom. It's not a good tool as far as, particularly with these computers that have come in at Year 9 level and some Year 10, where students perhaps are accessing things that they shouldn't be while the class teacher is instructing. That's why I think they've got to have a standard schools where you say no computers, no iPhones, no ear music or whatever while teacher is instructing. I think it's really damaging education, some of the technology that's allowed to be used in the classroom for wrong purposes.
If you could give advice to your 15-year-old self, what would you tell her?
Study hard, particularly maths. Maths teachers are like hen's teeth, good maths teachers. Maths was never my favourite subject. Now as a teacher's aide, I'm semi-retired, we've gone back as a teacher aide, 3 days a week at Lyndhurst Secondary College. Maths is very, very important. I love English, mind you, never really good at it, but I do love it. The English and can be inspirational if you've got a good teacher again. Maths is very, very important, and I know I used it in drafting. It's one of those things where what you know is what you know, but I never kind of ventured out into anything else but maths. Trigonometry back in the old days really used to scare me, and all those logarithms and things like that. With calculators now it's a lot easier, so hey, if you're a 15-year-old, go and study maths and study it hard.
What were you like as a student?
Very quiet at first. Because I've been to so many different schools in a primary school, I was probably a very overly quiet student, fairly well intimidated at that stage. As the years went on, probably I drew strength from that, and I was able to mix in circles and become friends with perhaps people that I would not have become friends if I hadn't have been at other places. I found it after a little while easy to make friends. Just a matter of approaching people in the right way. I was a very timid student in primary school. In secondary college, once my wings spread out and I learned to fly, I felt that I gained confidence, and I enjoyed my education. Became a little bit a joker, I suppose you might say. I love to get a laugh out of people, and things like putting a spider under the lid of the piano. I think it was Miss Dodd, I'm not quite sure. When she opened it up, she found the spider there. Plastic one. Just little practical jokes, and get laughs out of kids as well.
What did you used to do for fun?
Communicating. We often practiced basketball and things like that. And I didn't join in any sporting teams, but we did play a little bit of basketball at lunchtimes. But basically sat around and had chats with other young girls.
Did you attend any dances or any sort of social activities in the Frankston
In
area?
those days there weren't many social activities, not like there are now, and I didn't go on excursions, although there was one, I think there was one to Queensland that perhaps I would have liked to have gone on, but I didn't go on that one. I cannot remember attending any dances at Frankston High School. I can remember attending dances at the church group, Methodist Church, but not at Frankston High School. I think they may have had them at year 11 and 12, and by that time I was at Emily McPherson's.
What are some of the main exciting moments in Frankston that happened back then?
Well, in Frankston there was the movie
On the beach?
On the Beach, Ava Gardner, can't remember. Yeah, that was huge in Frankston. It was something that we were all excited about. We went down to see that, and I think I saw the head of Ava Gardner going, walking along, but that's about all I saw. There was great excitement, lots of activities, even after that, as far as, that's where I think Frankston started to get a name for itself. Before that we were kind of a sleepy little, before the war, mother and father lived in Murrumbina at that particular time. They moved down to Frankston, 1946, 47. Then they moved around a little bit, building houses, and we went up to Bentley or Oakley and around that area, and then came back to Frankston, and Dad around Queen Street area built a few houses around that area, and then we went up to Woodlands Grove up in Frankston. We thought this house was absolutely fantastic. We moved in a huge house, triple story, on the side of a hill, and just thought it was an absolute. I wanted to stay there forever. Fantastic views. I loved to draw. Used to draw the bay right across to Melbourne. In those days there weren't so many skyscrapers, but I loved to draw the outline of the bay, which we had a good view of from my bedroom, and the balcony at the back of the house. Brother was involved with a few productions. He was an opera singer around Frankston, and we were involved with the church.
What advice would you give to those wanting to pursue teaching?
Good teachers are like hen's teeth. If you want to be a teacher, make sure your motives are good motives. If you're going into it for money and holidays, that's fine, but remember that you're moulding young people to look after the earth when we've gone. You have to have patience, you have to have a good sense of humour, you have to be honest and fair, to have a certain type of intellect. You don't necessarily have to be the brightest person on earth, but you have to be dedicated. It becomes your life, it takes over. You have to be prepared for that.
Tell me about some of your most memorable students, the ones that sort of stick out in your mind.
The students that most stick out in my mind really, because for about 8 years I was a welfare coordinator, students that stick out in my mind are the ones that have bounced back through adversity. There was a young lady that I can remember who had lived the most horrendous young life imaginable, had come to me with different difficulties. After a little while, referred her to DHS, and we worked through the issues. She is now a normal citizen. I think the ones that I can remember are the students that bounce back and make something of their lives. I can remember lots of funny situations, overreactions from myself. Don't know whether you're prepared for this, like finding condoms on doorknobs filled with yogurt. And that's dreadful. How could they do that? But then laughing it off rather than overreacting to the situation. I'm glad, in hindsight, that I did that. As far as individual students are concerned, you remember the kids that become ducks of classrooms. You remember little incidents in classrooms. I had one student put a pair of scissors under the needle just to see what would happen with the needle. He found out when it ended up near his eye. Yeah, luckily he blinked. You know, those little incidents you do remember. I suppose little boys do experiment with things a little bit more than girls. Individual students, I think, you do remember the successful ones, but you also, I think I basically remember the ones that's back.
What do you love most about teaching?
You are moulding young people, not just in a subject area, you're moulding them for life. And I think that's the thing that I love, without being too self-righteous. The thing that I love, of course, I've made many mistakes. Perfect. I wasn't ever a perfect teacher. That in itself allows you to improve. You know, if you realise that that you're not doing things the correct way or the best way, find out ways of doing things better. And I'd see them go out at year 12, fantastic citizens, and to think that I had a hand in that, that gave me great joy. To see that they'd finished their education, we're going on to tertiary education, or tertiary education is not for everybody. To see them going out as citizens into the working life, it's fantastic to think that I had something to do with that.
What do you like most about Frankston?
I actually think it's a little bit more laid back than inner suburbia. I haven't lived here for many, many years. Growing up, I'm proud to say I was a Frankston girl. I loved Frankston. All these jokes about Frankston now really upset me, because Frankston is and was a beautiful place. Beautiful beaches, friendly people.